No, you're good. I don't
It's
know what just happened.
yeah, no, it's something happened with recording. Bizarre. I think we're
Yeah,
going now.
I
It's
think
all of a
so
sudden
too.
it was like stopping. All right, we'll cut that. Um, so welcome, Danny. Your intro.
Yes, sir. So I started the podcast in July of 2020, and I started it because I put out on Twitter, "Who wants to talk on the phone?" I just tweeted that out into the universe, and I wanted to connect with fellow human beings who were on this floating rock in space. It was kind of a time during quarantine where people weren't really talking that much, people weren't connecting. So I wanted a way to connect with people. And so I did that, and I enjoyed it tremendously. I probably had like 25 to 50 to maybe even 100 phone calls. I couldn't tell you, but it was so enjoyable to connect and learn from people, learn about their stories, how they were dealing with COVID, and what their parts of the world were doing about it. And I just found it so interesting, so fascinating, and about their own lives that I said, these conversations are super valuable for me. They're valuable for the other person. Why don't I just press record on them? And so I did that, and it was really a journey of saying to myself, I'm going to do one episode a week for at least 100 episodes, so I guess 2 years. And I ended up loving it so much that now I've done over 2 years, and it's been 261 episodes, and it's just like I found a joy, I found a calling, I found something that I really enjoy doing for the sake of doing it, whether or not anyone enjoys it as well. And so, yeah, that's kind of the journey of the podcast genesis and how it came to be.
So I love that. So what I love about that is that like stumbling into your bliss, if you will, right? Stumbling into like what really nourishes your soul in a way. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think that so often the things that we're rewarded for externally might not be in alignment with the things that nourish our soul. It might be the case where a professional athlete, right, they are really good at basketball or baseball, but does it nourish their soul? From what I've heard and seen, surprisingly, it's like not all the time, which you would surprise because it feels like play. But the point I'm making is that like sometimes we need to actually think about like what is giving me joy for the sake of doing it that I could do forever. And the podcast is certainly one of those things that it seems like to me in this moment that is just giving me so much joy. What about you, Calvin? What are the things in your life that give you joy for the sake of doing it?
It's a good question. Like figuring stuff out and then simplifying it and being able to communicate it to people in a simple way. I feel like a lot of things, like I study stuff and I'm part of a bunch of different masterminds and I read tons of books and just study. And I feel like most times people aren't able to articulate it clearly. And especially I feel like the thing that's missing is how does it all fit together, right? You have like, this training on like lead magnets. Like I'm like in business marketing mode these days, so that's kind of what's top of mind, right? But like this stuff on lead magnets, and this stuff on avatar, and this stuff on your funnels, and this stuff on like LinkedIn strategies or whatever. Like, how do we tie it all together into and like tracking? There's so many pieces to it, right? How do we tie it all together? How does it all fit together? So it's not just like, a thing over there and like, squirrel, right, all the time. But there's a strategy behind it and there's a through line to it. That's what really fascinates me. And I love doing that. I can do it forever. And funny enough, like you were talking about, have a sauna meeting after this and I live in one of those luxury high-rise buildings in New York City. We have a sauna on the 9th floor and that's my go-to after work. Where I go to the sauna and I have this notebook. It's not here with me, but like a waterproof notebook and a pen that can write, like a Fisher Space pen. And then I'll just like all of the stuff that's percolating in my head from the day, I'll distill it and simplify it down in my note taking in the sauna.
Yeah, I wonder why some of the best ideas happen in the sauna. Just like you're able to just let your guard down, or you're able to just be, and the heat, something about it just takes you out of your body and into the moment.
Yeah, and like I feel like it takes you out of your head and into your body actually.
That's what
and then like it kind of slows down that noisy part of your brain a little bit, so that you can get to some of the little bit more the old stuff that bubbles up from your unconscious. And I find that there's a balance with like when the temperature range gets too hot, my brain shuts down, but it needs to shut down just enough that it quiets down so I can get to the good stuff.
That's so true. What's the name of the notepad that's waterproof?
It's right in the rain. Here, let me grab it. One sec.
Let's go.
I'll show you. Here. I was down there last night doing this exact thing. So this is my orange one, Right in the Rain. There we go.
What's it called?
Right in the Rain, RITE, in the Rain. It's just on Amazon. It was one of those things. One day I was sitting down there. I was like, I wonder if there's like a waterproof notepad. That would be really cool. And then I go on Amazon and boom, there it is. There's plenty of them.
Oh my God. Yeah, so cool.
Taking notes, on stuff. It works like gangbusters. So I have my little extended office down there. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, you came on my radar. Like I think it was when like, you had your interaction with Gary Vaynerchuk. That was when I saw you on Twitter, right? But it was just like instantly, it was just obvious how much positivity exuded from you. And I don't know, like in a profile picture and 280 characters. But still, it was like the positivity just oozed from you, and I think it's that it is that like kind of loving what you do, and it's fascinating to me. So, how many conversations did you have before you started to hit record on it?
20 episodes I recorded in the backlog before I even pressed publish on.
No, right, but you said like you started just having phone conversations, and then at some point you were like, "Hey, I should record these."
Yeah, so like 25 to 100. I don't know how many exactly.
All right, yeah. You weren't keeping a log. Yeah. But that was it a business idea for you from the beginning, or is it a business now? Like, how is it, like, how does that look?
So I guess like it's turning into a business slowly but surely because of I do podcast clips for people. So that's like one avenue of the business. Then I also have the newsletter, which I just launched, a paid newsletter, which is going amazing from the first, 2 days of the launch. So I guess it's slowly but surely turning into a business. But I mean, I never really I wasn't thinking when I wrote that tweet on July of 2020, this is going to be a business. This is going to be an opportunity for me. I was just like, this is just what I want to do in this moment. Like speak to the people who are following me. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, how old are you, buddy?
27.
27, yeah. So like 25 when you started this?
I guess, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it was one of my friends, Gay Hendricks. I don't know if you know him from, like, he has some great books. The Big Leap is one of his famous books.
Conscious Living is one of the books that helped me tremendously. And I had him on the podcast and very early on, like maybe episode 60 or something like that. Like, sweet. And incredible man. Like, I'm so enamored with him.
Yeah, he's such a darling. He's phenomenal. I coached with him back in 2012. That's how we connected, and then since then met him many times and count him as among my friends. He's a phenomenal human being. But one of the things that's really stood out for me is he always talks about how your 20s are for experimentation, right? Your 30s are for integration. Your 40s are for building your life, and your 50s are for enjoying your life. Pretty sure that's how he breaks it down. But that, like, in your 20s, a lot of people feel like they have to know their path in life and they have to have it all figured out and all that stuff. But really, like, no, dude, use your 20s to just try shit and see what you like. And I mean, that's exactly what you did. Yes,
that's exactly what I was doing. And I was very much of the perspective that if there's ever a time to take a risk or there's ever a time to explore curiosity, it's when I'm living in my parents' house and I have no people depending on me directly, like that was my North Star of how I was thinking in that moment.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No, that's exactly. What do you see amongst your peers? Because like I'm like 20 years older. What do you see amongst your peers when it comes to connection? Is that something that people know how to do? Is it something that they long for? What's the state?
Yes. So, I mean, this is just one man's perspective. So take it or leave it. But from where I'm sitting, it seems like the podcast is the place that has taught me and helped me nurture being without technology for an hour plus and connecting deeply with somebody. And so that idea of like connect deeply with somebody doesn't normally happen when the phone's in front of us. And the problem is every 15 minutes, someone's going to be checking the phone for something, which then demolishes the connection of the moment.
Right.
And so,
yeah.
well,
and even
that's it.
Even, I remember seeing a study that said like even if the phone is on the table, even if it's flipped upside down, right? It's, well, I forget, like less connection. Yeah.
I feel that so strongly. And I think that doing the podcast has intentionally made me more aware of that, and also made me put the phone in a different room or away for an hour or more, which I don't know if I would have done had it not been for having the podcast.
Yeah. And it's also, I mean, it's a connection with self as well, right? So now you're doing it when you're on the podcast with someone else, but then, what about those moments? Yeah. I mean, for me, that's also one of the benefits of the sauna, right? Like, phone is not there. It's not part of the picture.
Exactly. That's very true. I mean, in order for me to best connect with somebody else, I first need to connect deeply with myself. And if I can be a mirror for somebody as they truly are in that moment when I'm doing the podcast, then that's a success for me, because I want the person to learn something about themselves. I want the person to make a new connection or a new understanding that they might not have had before. And the only way I could do that is if I first connect with myself and I first say, like, what am I trying to get out of this conversation? Or how can I let this conversation be whatever it's going to be without judging it? I think that's a really important one. And so, it all starts with the connection to someone else, starts with the connection to yourself, I believe, truly.
Has that been a journey for you of learning to let the conversation be what it wants to be? Yeah.
I mean, it's a constant journey to this moment still. Like, I don't think I've mastered it. And I think as I do more, I will get better and better at that skill. But for me, it's the journey of letting the conversation be what it's supposed to be is something that I want to highlight the best of somebody else. I want to showcase their writing or showcase their abilities or be able to say things about them or take them down places that they normally don't go. So I have trouble letting go from that perspective. But sometimes no path leads the path. And so it's kind of figuring out that balance.
I know that you do a ton of research for your episodes. Do you have like some specific places that you want the conversation to go?
I just want to highlight the best in the other person. It's not necessarily that I want it to go a specific place, but I just I want the person listening to be able to really understand like why this person is so amazing. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And what about you? Like, why do you think that is so important to you? Because like clearly there's like a deep curiosity in you. There's a deep drive to connect and to see and to understand and to showcase people.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just inherent in my being, like, is what I truly believe. Like, I'm always early on creators in particular. I'm always early on, like, seeing their skills, seeing them develop, seeing, how they operate. Like, I always feel like I see it before the rest of the world does, probably because I just enjoy media and I enjoy consuming. So when I see it, I want the world to see it as well. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that's the answer to why it's so fascinating to me, and why I want people to showcase their gifts and be the vehicle for people to do that.
Yeah, I love that. It's beautiful, man. What are the like? You kind of stumbled on this. I'm curious about, like, what are the evolutions of Danny?
Yeah, I mean, one of my core beliefs is that we can play many different characters in one lifetime. And I think that the evolutions of me stem back to, like, playing Little League Baseball, right? And so I'm playing Little League Baseball, and then I'm like writing a blog about my Little League Baseball team. So it's like, that's evolution number 001 maybe, or I mean, there are evolutions before that, but that's like the evolution that I think about. And then it's like, you know, the evolution of wanting to just be a normal kid in school, even though I wanted to, like, create content on the internet. Then there's the evolution of like being in college and having a lot of friends and being, you know, enjoying their company. Then there's the evolution of e-commerce, marketing. Then there's the evolution of, maybe I should be writing. Then there's the evolution of podcast. Like, there's so many different phases in just one lifetime, and so many different characters I've played. And one part about that is I've always, in the back of my head, said, I've played all these different characters. Like, am I capable of playing any character long enough for it to have a meaningful impact on the world? That's, like, been one of my questions to myself. That I've always, do I have the discipline to do something enough? And I think with the podcast, I've answered the question of yes. Like, even when I fell down with it, I've stepped back up. And I think about my fitness journey of, like, been lifting weights now for 5 years. Like, even when I fell with that, I get back up, because something in my soul, like, longs to see how it will play out long term. And I think that's the important thing to think about. It's like, not just the things you're disciplined about. What are the things that you were disciplined about that you want to get back to, and that you do get back to? Because it's almost more meaningful when after you stop doing something, that you do it again. It really shows, like, that it's really important to you. Because there are a lot of things that I've started and stopped in life, but the things that I've gotten back up at, even after I've stopped, are really where my soul lies, I believe.
And what are those things for you?
I mean, the podcast and fitness and writing is probably another one. You know, I just started the newsletter. So, yeah.
The things you can't not do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
What is it like when it gets, you talk about when you fell down with the podcast, when you fell down with training, like, what happens that makes you stumble, and what makes you come back on track?
Yeah, I think it's chasing short-term opportunities, maybe, or getting bored. So by getting bored, I mean, in the fitness sense, it's like you follow the same routine over and over again, and you don't try different things, or you don't venture out. When I say short-term opportunities, I mean the podcast sense, where it's like, okay, as you get bigger, you get more opportunities, and some of those opportunities are going to be correct, and some of those are going to be incorrect. One example is, like, I was doing an NFT podcast for a little bit from October of 2021 to December of 2021. And that took me away from doing the thing that was core to my being. I hypothesized that the thing that was core to my being was the podcast or podcasting. But I realized that's not it. That was just a vehicle for me to show other people's gifts. And it wasn't that I was obsessed with podcasting. I'm not obsessed with talking. I'm not obsessed with, like, being a talking head. I'm obsessed with, like, learning from people who I'm fascinated by and showing their gifts. And so if I can't do that, then it's not going to work out. But I only could have learned that from doing the NFT podcast, and that made me stop doing my own because I was upset at myself. So that's
Wait, so I'm trying to understand here. So with the NFT podcast, you weren't learning? Or
I was learning, but it was a lot of reporting on the news of the latest happenings of the NFT world. It was like the drama, the TMZ. This is project's doing this, and this project's doing this, and they're
right.
fighting, and this. So it wasn't really like it wasn't deep for me.
Got it. Well, it sounds to me like the connection was missing, right?
Yeah, that's probably it. That was probably it.
Yeah.
It's a good point.
Yeah, the connection and like that deep dive into the soul of another person. I wanted to we all want to be seen in some way, right? It's
Totally.
a human drive, and so being able to do that for another person is a gift. Like whatever we give, we receive ourselves, right? So when you do that with someone else, it touches your own soul, your own being.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I think that it's like I need to think about the times in my life when I'm most connected. I feel most alive. Recently I've been doing in-person podcasts, and it's almost like the connection is so much deeper. The ability to really see the person and be with them and feel their energy, that it's making me like not lean as much into the online podcasts. And it's just an interesting thing because I don't feel as connected to you in this moment as if we were in the same room together. Just the case. But it's probably like 30%, maybe 40%.
Yeah. No, I mean it's crazy, right? Like there's no substitute for actually being together in person. Like this is better than we're like pandemic and we're quarantined and everybody's stuck at home, and then like actually getting on the phone with someone is a lot better than just sitting all alone at home, right? But damn, there's just no freaking substitute for being together in person. It's
in person is the best.
Yeah, and it's almost like we forget that sometimes, right? We sit in each of our boxy apartments or houses or whatever it is, and then we're like all just chatting on the interwebs, and we're like substituting that for real life. I was talking to someone in the sauna last night who lives on my floor, and he was like, dude, like, I mean, there'll be like 48 hours, 72 hours where I don't leave my apartment. And like, he lives in a studio apartment, right? And then like, you work online, you order food, like it's crazy, but we're kind of gotten used to it. And then just like 2 weeks ago, I was in San Diego with my leadership team, and, we're out there for the Trafficking and Conversion Summit. And then I went to Austin after that for a workshop and some other stuff. And just like being able to sit down with people there's no substitute. You're inspiring me. I want to go in-person podcast now.
Yeah, you definitely should. And here's the thing. It's like a lot of it's hard to fight upstream sometimes of the city or culture you live in. And San Diego and Austin, to me, two cities that I've lived in technically, I feel as if both of those cities prioritize connection with another human being much more than New York. And that's not to say you can't connect with people in New York. Like that's not what I'm saying. But I am saying that it's very much a culture of openness in both San Diego and Austin. Of have the conversation, meet the person, say hello first, and just be kinder. Is from my perspective of New York versus Austin/San Diego. What about you?
Yeah, no, that's my experience too. Especially now, like in Austin, I think it's part of it too is like the compactness of New York City, right? Like Austin, there's just more space, more room, like more just like houses, and especially when you get out of just the downtown. But the downtown area is fairly limited. This time I was living south, down by, I forget what it's called, but like south of downtown, and yeah, like just easy, chill to get around and easy to connect with people and just chat with people. It's a different vibe, and I definitely miss that too here. One of the things that I have done is I have as a general rule, Thursday night, if I'm not traveling, I host a dinner at my place.
That's nice. That's a good idea.
Yeah. And invite friends over, and then friends start inviting friends, and then they become part of the crew, and then they invite their friends, and it's just like a standing thing. And sometimes it's newer people, sometimes it's repeat, sometimes it's like 3 people, sometimes it's 10, right? But yeah, that's been really nice to just have that cadence of actually seeing people. And I also feel like, I don't know if it's a European thing, but I feel like a lot of Americans won't actually invite people over to their house, right? It's more, or maybe it's sort of their apartment,
Are you, so you're European?
Yeah, I am. Yes, I'm from Denmark.
Ah, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Did you grow up in Denmark?
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yeah. I moved to New York when I was your age, pretty much. I think I was 25 when I moved to New York. Yeah.
Wow. So did you speak English growing up? Was that like a thing you were required?
So in Denmark, we learn English in school. But I got into software and computers very early on. Like before, my mom started a software company. Wow. 3 years before the PC was invented. So
wow.
It was like in 1980.
It was in your blood.
It was in my blood. Yeah. Both my parents were programmers, and they connected over that. And like they started when there was literally 5 computers in the entire country. Oh. It was like, oh yeah. So yeah, I got that in from early age. And so I kind of learned a little bit of English from programming, because it's,
wow.
if and else and while and until, and just started to get a little bit. And then I would always pester my dad to buy books, computer books, from his trips to the US, because you can get these books in Denmark. And so, yeah, got into American culture kind of that way.
That's so fascinating. I mean, how many people do you think could say that they learned the English language or it helped them learn the English language through coding? Like, not that many people, right?
No, I don't think so. No.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And so like when you were 25 and moving to New York, you said?
Mm-hmm.
What were your first impressions of New York?
I loved it. So there are 2 aspects to it, or a couple. So there's something in just arriving in the country and just feet on the ground. I don't know if you're someone who picks up on the energy of places.
Very much so. That's why I love Austin.
Yeah. For me, there is each city definitely has their own energy, but the whole country or the whole continent or the whole country, I would say probably, has an energy to it that I really love. I just love America so deeply in a way that I can't explain. Wow. I think the best I've had some in some guided meditations, I've had some visions come up of like native Indian heritage, or like, I'm not saying I have heritage, but like past lives kind of stuff. I have no idea if there's any reality to it, but there is like this deep connection with both the land and the culture in a way that I can't explain.
Wow. That's super cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like, I arrived here and I was like, God, I feel at home here in a way that I never did in the country I grew up in.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you're just like, I'm going to stay forever? Like when you initially moved, it
pretty
was...
much, yeah. I was like, this is it. This is
one-way ticket type of deal?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So, and then there's like immigration authorities don't always see it the same way. So there's some practicalities there. But yeah, pretty much. And I think the other part was that one of the things that I loved was my English was always quite good. And I've had, an American-ish accent. So that was fairly easy. But I love traveling. But whenever I travel, I hate feeling like a tourist. And
interesting.
That was one of the beautiful things about New York, especially, is like, my English was better than half the people who live here and have lived here for a long time, right? So there was never that feeling like an outsider.
Yeah, everyone everyone's an insider because there's no inside in a way. And that's how it seems to me, at least.
Exactly, especially in the city, right? Like everybody's from somewhere, and like half the people don't even speak English, and
everyone's going somewhere.
Right, exactly, right, yeah. So yeah, dude, I've just felt so connected. Really love this place.
That's beautiful.
I can't imagine living anywhere else now.
And you've lived here for how long? Or in New York for how long?
Well, so about 10 years, because what happened was then 9/11 happened. And we had actually, my girlfriend and I, we actually moved to San Francisco 10 days before. So September 1st, we moved out of the city, moved to San Francisco. And then 9/11 happened, and the company I was working for needed to lay off. They needed to raise funds, and because 9/11, there were no funds to be raised. All the financial markets were frozen. And so they ended up firing everybody on the West Coast, and I just transferred to the West Coast, so I was on the chopping block. And so I could have gotten another job and stayed on that visa that I had, but we decided, hey, we're going to live here for the rest of our lives. Let's take a year or two in Denmark. And then that ended up being like 9 years and 2 kids and a divorce. And so there's some there's a little bit of history or
full evolution.
Yeah. So, I mean, back to like, evolutions of Calvin, right? Like there's definitely like, several versions there. Yeah.
You've had more time on the floating rock.
I do. I have. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
It's crazy that like you've been to so many different places. It feels like Denmark, New York, and San Francisco. It's like a lot of different cultures and a lot of different just like ways of being. Where else have you spent let's say more than a month?
Yeah, it's about a year in India.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's also a deep part of you that's like seeker as well. We talk about meditation and like like going to a new land. Those are like traits of seekers, I feel like.
Yeah. I think I definitely qualify as the seeker. So my friends are like, I've never met anyone who's like as seeking as you. And I mean, part of it is just my nature, and part of it is just like all my insecurities and unworthiness and all that, just like searching for something that I can hold on to.
What about India was noteworthy?
Yeah, so I mean, India was amazing and frustrating as well. But we ended up in India because after the divorce, I met this other girl who's also Danish, and we applied for a visa. We got married and applied for a visa to the U.S., got denied, and then she was like, "Okay, neither of us want to stay in Denmark at this point, so why don't we move to India and do Ashtanga?" And so I was like,
what is that?
Let's do it. That was exactly my question. After committing, I was like, okay, now tell me what it is. So Ashtanga is a form of yoga. And so we went there to do Ashtanga. So like, it's like a pretty intense, powerful form of yoga. And it was like 6 days a week at the yoga shala. Wake up at 3:45-ish, be at the yoga shala at 4:15. Ready to do your morning practice, and then you'd be home by 6-ish and take a shower, and then and then by 6 it's like you start to wind down and get to bed so you can be up early again the next day.
Wow. What a routine. And what year was that?
That was 2012.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Wow. Could you like, I couldn't imagine myself like living that life of being in the yoga studio, or not, it's not a studio. It's like, what was it that where did you do yoga? They
call it the shala. So it's like the history of yoga. I don't know if you're familiar, but there was a guy named Krishnamacharya who's now dead, but he's not been dead that long, like 15 years maybe. He lived to over 100. And he basically reinvented modern yoga. It was practically dead in India, and then he got hired by the king of Mysore, and he ran away from home when he was a kid, and then he basically kind of reinvented yoga, or dug it up again and made it a thing. And then everybody who's doing yoga today is from one of his students. Are the ones that have started all the traditions of the yoga that exist today. And one of those is this guy named Pattabhi Jois, who started Ashtanga yoga. And so it's actually Pattabhi Jois's grandson who was running that shala. So that's why it was in India, right? Like you go to the source, to the original. The Pattabhi Jois died 10 years ago or something. He had passed away just a few years before we went. But yeah, so it's it's at the source, it's at that yoga shala. And it's a really cool experience. And it's fascinating how you talked about discipline before, which is a topic that I am very fascinated with, because I don't know how you feel about discipline, but for me, it was always, damn, I hate that word, because it was always associated for me with my dad punishing me. And so it was I don't want to, I was very rebellious in that way. And it was only much later in life that I had learned, wow, discipline is so cool. It's really powerful, right? Because I can make that decision one time and I don't have to debate myself, and I don't have to feel shame or feel guilty or beat myself up if because I decided otherwise. I just make the decision and just stick with it, and actually it frees up my life. But that took me a long time to recognize.
When did you realize that discipline was important?
I think the big moment where it hit me was when I quit drinking. So I was grew up in Denmark is very much of an alcohol culture, and I was feeling very, I kind of took to alcohol as my drug of choice, if you will. And at some point I got really into mixology and started making cocktails, and that was definitely not good for my drinking. And then at some point, I think in 19, I was like, you know what? I'm done with this thing. Let me just at least take a year of not drinking at all. And having made that decision and just being so firm in it, I just felt free. I just felt so free from not having to worry about it. Should I drink? Should I not drink? Did I drink too much? How will I feel the next day? All that stuff, right?
It's funny that you said it happened for you at 19. And is the drinking age in Denmark 18?
No. So 2019, dude. So,
2019. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Interesting. So very recently, in the past.
Fairly recently,
years.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. What got you so into it in the beginning? Why do you love alcohol or why do you spend so much time with alcohol?
I think so. I think a couple things, but I just felt shit. I just generally felt not very good, and so it was my escape. It was my looking forward to I can have a drink, and then I can kind of my whole nervous system relax, and I can feel good, and there's a lot of fear running my system, a lot of anxiety, a lot of feeling wrong, feeling like I have to be someone I'm not, all that kind of stuff. And so, and part of it too was, so what happened was about a year and change before that, I was working with a mentor who pointed out, he's like, dude, Calvin, your feminine is super well developed and very strong, 80%, but your masculine is very underdeveloped, as maybe 20%. And as a man, we got to flip that. And it was, what I found was that at some point as a boy, I had decided that my dad was scary and I didn't want to be like him. And so, and I had, through things that happened, just, made the unconscious choice that masculine side of me was wrong and shouldn't be here. And so that was a little, maybe 4 or 5 year old boy that was still living there inside of me. And so alcohol was kind of an escape from that. And so what happened was as part of that, developing that side, I started working out and building my body and started just eating more healthy. in sort of an organic, natural way, not because I try to, but just because as I moved my body and exercised more, I felt better and I craved more healthy food. And then eventually I was just like, look, I'm not enjoying this alcohol thing anymore. I'm actually feeling pretty good. And when I drink, I actually feel worse. Not just the next day, but like while drinking, I'm actually feeling worse than before I had this drink. Like why would I do this?
And then you just what's your drinking been like in the past year or so? Like, has it just been a no drinking since 2019 or?
Then so I ended up taking 16 months and then started drinking a little bit again, but never a whole lot. And then in November of last year, I was like, screw it. Let me just drop it completely. So I haven't had a drink since November. So 11 months now. Yeah.
I mean, I think drinking is something that less and less people are doing at a societal level as well, which is really interesting. And that I'd be curious to know in 30 years, do the kids look at drinking the same way we thought of cigarettes?
But then people are smoking pot like freaking crazy, especially around here, everywhere on the streets, just people smoking marijuana. I'm like, that's not good, guys. Like, I mean, because the thing is, like, you wouldn't day drink right on the street, but marijuana is just like, yeah, why not, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't spent enough time with marijuana to know the appeal of doing it during the day or just doing it in general, honestly.
Right. Yeah, I mean, people are definitely smoking during the day around here, like everybody everywhere outside on the street, and it's like, and I think the whole culture of I'm all for legalizing drugs in general, because when you criminalize it, you just create organized crime, right? Yeah. And that there's so much money in it, and that money finds its way to politicians and police people and judges, and there's just no way that it doesn't corrupt society when there's such a black market. But also, I am concerned that, like, I don't think it's healthy generally to, like, so these days, like, no sugar, no caffeine, no alcohol, no, like, really, like, no pharma drugs, no nothing. I don't do anything, and I feel amazing. Like, the idea that you need any of those drugs is mistaken. You don't.
What made you realize, like, okay, I don't need anything? Like, you cut out alcohol. Were all the rest of those things that you added on slowly after? Also, were you drinking when you were doing the yoga in 2012?
I wasn't actually. So the first 5 months, no alcohol, then came back and started drinking alcohol again. And I noticed that I started bloating and other things. So yeah, it was kind of interesting. And it was actually, it was an interesting moment where I made a really good friend down there. And I realized, dude, this is the first time as an adult that I've made a friend where alcohol wasn't involved.
Wow. Yeah, I'm sure that was a big moment where you're like, holy smokes.
Right. And again, like that, it's like in Denmark, it's very much the culture that there's always alcohol involved when you're seeing other people, right? Even if you just have a few friends over for dinner and it's a Tuesday night and it's very low key and stuff, like usually there'll be wine on the table, right? It's just, or beer, right? It's very, very common. Yeah. Yeah.
And then when did you realize that the other stuff was stuff you didn't want to touch?
So then caffeine I was part of a program called with a company called Biome Tech that I'm still doing some of it, which is about like some sprays to reset your microbiome. So your gut biome, but also there's bacteria all over your body. And part of that protocol is no caffeine. So that includes black tea, green tea, whatever else might have caffeine in it. And so I used to do, I was never really a coffee person, but I used to do green tea, and so I cut that out. And then I was like, you know what? I don't need this at all. It doesn't really like do anything for me. Now and so no chocolate either. Chocolate also has caffeine, right? And so the other day, 2 months ago, I did a chocolate croissant, and I had jitters for like 3 hours after.
Holy smokes.
Yeah. So
You did it with a group though?
Yes, with the biome tech stuff, yeah.
Yeah, I think if I ever were to quit caffeine, it would have to be with a group, honestly.
Oh,
Like,
yeah. Oh, tell me more about that. Why?
because it's too ingratiated in the culture, in every culture that I'm a part of. And I would want to just show, like, I would want to talk about the the progress or the changes with other people who also could experience what I'm experiencing.
Got it. Interesting. Yeah. What do you do for caffeine?
I
Coffee?
just have a coffee, yeah.
Yeah.
Coffee or two every morning.
And then that's it, just in the morning?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah. I mean that's super normal, right? Like
Yeah. But it's still a drug, you know? We just don't think about it like that. We don't
It
say,
is a
I'm
drug.
drugging myself with caffeine.
Right.
We don't say that, but we could.
Yeah. Well, you are, right? And it's so ingrained in the culture and the I think part of it is the caffeine, but there's also the coffee, which is dehydrating. And I notice like my breath gets if I do drink coffee, like I'll get like a weird stale breath from it. So I think the coffee itself is doing something as well. And I think for me, it's just comes to that place where it's unnecessary. Like the coffee doesn't give you energy. It blocks the receptors in your brain that allows you to feel tired. I forget the details of it. You're nodding like you are familiar.
No, I mean, I've heard that as well before.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it's a fascinating thing that, like, it's allowed in our society, but like, you know, other drugs aren't allowed. Like it seems arbitrary to me.
It is. I think it is, right? Part of it. So it's a fascinating conversation because I was watching the. Have you seen the documentary on Prohibition? I think it's on Netflix. Ken Burns. It's a PBS or something.
You recommend it?
It's really good, yeah. Because Prohibition was obviously problematic. It created the mafia, the organized crime, and all kinds of corruption and problems. Interestingly enough, Prohibition created the income tax because I think it's like 80% of tax revenue came from tax on alcohol. And so when they banned alcohol, they had to come up with another source of revenue. So they introduced the income tax. And then when they repealed Prohibition, they kind of forgot to repeal the income tax. I'm sure it's an oversight that they'll get on any moment now, but
Forgot.
but they didn't.
Tell me your least favorite parts of living in America, Calvin. I mean, honestly, Denmark taxes are probably really high too. If I had to
Denmark
guess.
taxes are high. Yeah, I think the frustrating thing for me is just how insanely corrupt and wasteful how the money is being spent is in this country.
Totally.
Whereas in Denmark, it actually goes to some useful stuff. You can agree or disagree, but it's not nearly as corrupt. Like here, it's like the money that you pay in taxes are used to actively create more problems rather than actually solve anything.
Yep. It certainly does feel that way sometimes.
Yeah. I'm sure a problem happens to get solved from time to time. But yeah, but Prohibition happened because there were real problems that men would go to work and then they would go to the pubs and then they'd get completely shit-faced after work and they would like stay that way. Like it was just out of control. And so that's why the women were leading in to say, hey, we got to have a prohibition and stuff and stop it. Right.
Wow.
And so I'm sympathetic to that, but it's the same thing with other kinds of drugs, cocaine or MDMA or ecstasy or like heroin, fentanyl, and all these drugs. Like the demand is so massive. Like what the hell are you going to do? Right? You can't even keep it out of prisons. Like how would you keep it out of society at large?
I wonder if we could imagine a world in which people connect with themselves deeply enough so that they don't need to connect with the drug in order to find themselves.
that's exactly the point, right? Like back full circle, but to where we started, because that's the thing. Connection is what we're actually craving, and that was true for me as well. So my drug was alcohol, which is an allowed, drug, but it's still a drug, and it's terrible. But what I was really after was the connection with myself that I wasn't able to have. And I mean, drugging our way there doesn't actually make it any easier to make that connection, right? It's only when we're sober that we can actually connect.
I don't know though. It's funny that you say that, because I feel like I've connected deeply with people through alcohol and through coffee, and like actually like gotten to know their soul at a deep level. So
no, 100%. The point I'm making is that for me, I was psychologically unable or unwilling to deeply connect with myself. And finding that connection was never going to happen when I was drugging myself to escape from the pain of that.
Good point.
Yeah.
Good point. Yep. That's exactly right. And I think, I honestly do think it's like a person by person basis, right? Like in terms of alcohol or coffee, right? Like, do you think like in an ideal world, everyone would just stop doing it altogether? But like there are benefits to both, right? Otherwise people wouldn't do them, that do help instill deeper things in the world. Mm-hmm. Would you say that?
I think they have their place, right? I'm very sympathetic to drugs, and I'm not going to try to be a saint. Like I'll do sugar from time to time, right? Like I did a chocolate croissant a couple months ago.
Going crazy there, Calvin. Going crazy with that chocolate croissant.
It's wild. I think it's totally fine. I think the thing though is that at a societal level, we are not teaching people to have that connection with themselves. Like for me, I don't like. What is your approach? Like just learning to feel our feelings. Has been for me, learning to feel my feelings has been a long ass journey and so important. And I feel like that's something that as a society we're terrible at.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I always say that when I was growing up, I learned how I could succeed in the external world, but I never understood how I could succeed in the internal world. And it was only when I got glimpses of going to therapy, or I got glimpses of just like journaling, that I really get to know myself. But I didn't do those consistently, and it wasn't like I wasn't taught to do them consistently. There wasn't a class that was like, here, you're going to journal and you're going to learn more about yourself.
So how did you get started doing that? Like what prompted you to get started doing that?
Well, so I saw my friend Tej Dosa on Twitter, and I read his tweets, and they were kind of business oriented, but they also had a lot of love infused in them. Mm-hmm. And that's the way I would describe it today. And I didn't know like what was different about him, but I could feel that he was tweeting and saying the things that he was saying differently than everyone else. And so I trusted his advice. He became a friend of mine. And I realized that he was meditating. So I was like, like Tej does it, I'll meditate. I look up to and admire this person. And I admire them because of how he speaks and how he tweets. And so I started 20 minutes in the morning, just like listening to myself, meditating, going inward, whatever you want to call it. Just like setting a timer for 20 minutes. And I didn't do it with any expectation of getting enlightened or getting to know myself better. I was just like, let me just do it because Tej does it, right? Like, and I admire Tej. So, yeah, that's how it started for me. And then I did, longer meditation. Then it's just like longer. And then it's like, it's just a process, I think, of for me, it was a process of finding what I admired in the world and replicating that experience myself. But certainly I wish I learned earlier, and I am grateful that I learned when I did, because it's something that has served me incredibly well, and there's no chance that I would have started the podcast if I hadn't been meditating previously.
So when did you start that?
September of 2019. So 3 years ago.
Yeah. And so it wasn't a pain. It was just like, there's something there. What is that? There was more like
curiosity.
I mean, and that seems like connection and curiosity seems to be like the key words for you, right?
Totally. Yeah. That's connection and curiosity. That's all the podcast is at the deepest level, right? Learning more about people and connecting with them. Like that's it.
Driven by love. Yeah.
Driven by love. Exactly. That's exactly right. And so it's interesting that you bring it up, because I don't think it has to start from a place of feeling deep pain to get to know yourself better.
No.
And nor does it have to go from a deep pain to like get better in your fitness regime, or you don't have to feel deep pain to change your life. You don't have to be in a place of lack to want to get better.
Right. Yeah. It's just that most people tend to not move until they feel a strong pain, right?
It's fair. It's fair. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, that's amazing. So meditation, journaling, what else are you doing to get to know you?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, my meditation routine over the past, 6 months to a year hasn't been like consistent or disciplined by any means. It's more of I need to take some time. I'm feeling overwhelmed. Like, let me just take some time for myself type of situation. Probably would be better served to do it every morning at a specific time, but I haven't been doing that, honestly. But getting to know myself like happens a lot in conversations. It happens a lot with talking to people and without a phone or without anything nearby, and really just like sitting with myself, sitting with how the things that they say are landing on me. It's been really impactful for me. And following and looking at what I admire is like a good way to get to know myself better, right? Like, what do I admire about this person? What do I admire about this thing? What do I admire about this conversation? What do I admire about, like, looking at my admiration has helped me get to know myself better.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's been a powerful key for me as well, of like, who are the people that I admire and what are the qualities about them that I admire? And then using that as a guide to get to know myself. I'm like, the things that I admire in other people are actually aspects of me that I might have just like outsourced to them and like disowned, right? Like there's the parts of ourselves that we don't want to be with because they're bad. But there's also the parts of ourselves that we don't want to be with because they're good, right? Because we're like, oh no, like he's like, for me it was like Steve Jobs, he's amazing. Like I don't have any of that stuff, right? And it's like, well, like I ain't no Steve Jobs, but like I may have some of those qualities that I admire in that guy, right? But I wouldn't admit that to myself because I was so busy like making myself wrong.
It's almost like the pedestal thing is so fascinating about how when somebody's on a screen or somebody's written about in a paper, it seems like an other. And I think that's a reason why people attack other people online, is because it seems like an other. It seems like that person is so big that they'll never even see my message. There's no way I could possibly connect with them, so I'll just try to tear them down. And then I can connect with other people who are also seeking to tear that person down. But in just terms of like the looking at someone and being like, I could never be that, or I could never do that. Like, you're probably right. You probably can't do that. Like, and that's why you're in this body, in this mind, and there are other things for you to do. But I like the idea of like taking from them, because it's like I'm never going to be LeBron James, right? Like I'm just never going to like have that athletic prowess and that ability. But what can I take from him and apply it to my own life in my own way? And also in a more like concrete way, I'm never going to be Joe Rogan. I don't have his interests and his passions, and I'm not funny. I'm not, so like, I'm not a comedian in that sense. I could get funnier, right? But it's like, it's just so funny how like we think about these people and we're like, I want to be them. But the truth is you don't need to be anyone except yourself.
Yeah. Has that been a thing that you had to learn?
Yeah, I think as I've gotten to know myself better, it's become more and more obvious to me as I've sat with myself and blocked out or toned down the noises of other people, the more I've gotten clearer on what I'm good at, what I like doing, and who I am. And I don't think I'm there by any means, but I'm certainly further along that process than I was 3 years ago or 5 years ago. And I think, like, as Gay Hendricks talked about, it's like the 20s is a time for exploration, and it's like you have to explore yourself. You have to figure yourself out. You have to explore the different facets. You have to see what fits and what doesn't. And part of that process is things that won't work out, which is often what we call failure. But yeah, it's been a journey, but it's been an exciting one. And I think meditation and journaling and asking what I admire has really played a key role in helping me get to know myself better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And you have to like be in the game, right? You have to be doing it before you can feel you can't think your way to it. You have to try it.
Yeah. But it's fascinating too, because for some people, thinking is their way of doing. So for example, a writer, right? A writer could be in his 20s, someone could be in their 20s and writing. And you could call writing doing, but some people won't call writing doing. Some people will be like, why are you writing? Like, that's not doing anything. Well, for them, they're trying to figure themselves out through the process of writing. Mm-hmm. And it's like, or let's say like playing video games, like that's not doing anything, but maybe that is, right? So it's like thinking about it from that perspective. It's like we're always doing something. Even if we're doing nothing, we are doing something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. No, I'm with you. I track with you there. Yeah, I think it's like, but you just like, thinking about like, I'm going to do a podcast and then I'm going to ask questions like this and it's going to be like this. And you just have like this plan in your head, but then you start executing and you're like, yeah, this thing where I'm talking to people is really fun. Like covering the news of the NFT world, like not so fun, right? Like you try it out, you see what you like, what you don't like by doing it. Yes.
So, okay. So I'll give you a good example. I'd love to hear what you think about this from a friend. I won't name him, but he has all these business ideas, and he has this Canva. Are you familiar with Canva, the online Photoshop-like software?
Yeah.
He's got like a new business idea every, 2 weeks. And every time he does it, he goes in Canva, creates a brilliant logo, creates a brilliant brand design for them, and is like, it's incredible. And someone might look at that and say, he's not doing anything. He's not creating any of these businesses. He's just not doing anything. But I look at that and I'm saying, oh, his thing is actually design. His thing is actually that he can look at these things and he has some, it feels from my perspective that he has some shame around the design aspects being his thing, because entrepreneurship's on this pedestal in life and he wants to create businesses, but it's like, it's design too. Like he's doing something by going into Canva. He's not doing nothing. So maybe like the planning for some people is the thing. I don't know. I'm so fascinated by that idea.
Yeah. No, I see where you're going. Yeah. I think you're absolutely onto something. And I think there's a lot of shame around like, oh, this is not like worthwhile. Like I should be doing this, that, and the other thing. And like that line of thinking though will get you nowhere. Right.
But sometimes it's not even a line of thinking. It's under the surface level of the consciousness. Mm-hmm. Do you understand?
100%. Oh, 100%. Yeah. No, and that's where having conversations is really helpful, right? Because like
exactly,
it doesn't become conscious till or journaling, right? It doesn't become conscious till I actually have to write down and figure out what it is. Like, why am I? Yeah.
So in that perspective, from that friend, I say to him, you got to, like, this is an incredible skill you have, and you shouldn't feel bad that none of these brands have launched. Like, you've already won by doing the thing, but you don't realize, and you're not valuing the thing enough in your own mind and your own heart, is how I frame it when I think about it.
Yeah.
But who knows? Yeah. I could be wrong.
Who knows? But it seems worth considering doing the design piece, right? And then seeing where that leads, and maybe he'll love it, maybe he won't. But I mean, it seems like he loves it, like and he's good at it. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. Lots of other things, lots of other things that can happen down the road, like experimentation.
Yeah, and I think, you know, when we talk about like not doing something, I just think we're always doing something, whether we like give ourselves credit for doing it or not. And I think it's so like, for the example of the person who plans the podcast, right? The person who plans the podcast maybe is just an expert planner, and that's not a bad thing. That's not procrastinating. Like, they enjoy the process of planning. And so so like demonizing that, or saying like, wow, like you really should be doing the podcast instead of just planning about it. No, like maybe the planning, they're an amazing planner, and maybe they're going to be an amazing assistant or amazing execute. They're going to be an amazing way. They're going to help somebody plan something in the future that person themselves is more of an actor. And it's so fascinating how we judge certain things in our mind of like, no, the actor is more valuable than the planner. But is that really the case? I don't know, because maybe planning is the action.
I love you, man. You're amazing. I will. So I completely see where. I mean, I totally see what you're saying.
It's just one perspective. It's just one perspective.
Yeah. No. I mean, and I think you're right. And so, but there's another level to it. So I'll tell you, for me, like I was really good at. I got really good at computers because I was really terrified of human beings. Because I was bullied, and they would say stuff, and I'd have all these feelings, and it was very scary for me. And it was actually not until like 3.5 years ago, so 2019, I got to go to Necker Island and meet Richard Branson, and I was like stuck on a deserted island for a week with a bunch of strangers, and it was really difficult for me because it was the first time as an it kind of brought me back to school.
Getting bullied.
I wasn't bullied on Necker, right? But it was like a bunch of strangers. I was, sharing a room with someone, and like I couldn't control the environment, and it was like it brought up all of my childhood traumas. And it was great because at that point I had the tools to actually work through it. So it ended up being a huge breakthrough. But one of the patterns for me was, because I was scared of people, I would get really good. And it is a skill that I've gotten really good at, like planning, right?
Gotcha.
And figuring out like what I want to do and all that stuff, but then not actually pulling through and actually doing it. And so, yeah, there's nothing wrong with being good at like the dreaming up of the plans and all of that stuff, but it's also really helpful if you actually want to realize some of them to be able to take the next step. All right.
And I think, sorry to cut you off, I think a good distinction on that is like, is it based on fear or not? Mm-hmm. Right? Are you doing the planning out of love, and are you not doing the next step because you're in fear of something? Then it's worth considering. That's a really good distinction and point.
Yeah. All right, man.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say, maybe we should consider, where are we being fearful in life, and just question it, right? Question it to figure out more.
And that gets into a really, really, I think 100%, right? Like that, and again, there's no shame in that either, right?
Definitely not.
Fear is completely natural, normal. We all have it. It's just that when we are able to transcend the fear, to feel the fear. One of my favorite quotes, I learned that from Gay Hendricks, is "Fear is excitement with the breath held."
Oh, it's so good.
Right?
Oh, so good.
So when we learn to transcend the fear, to feel the fear, transcend the fear, and then our world opens up, and there's more freedom, there's more life, there's more possibility. but the fear is not just like, it's not conscious. A lot of it's unconscious, and a lot of it is in the body. One of the things that I've gotten a lot of help from is a Danish body therapy system called Body SDS, Body Self-Development System. And they work to release stuff that, your emotional trauma is through the body. So like I had my first treatment in 2007, and he opened up my body, and then I just started crying for the first time in 15 years. I hadn't cried before, just waves of tears, and then laughter, and then tears, and then laughter. And like with no context, no story, no content. It wasn't about anything. It was just old stuff leaving the body.
Holy smokes.
But one of the things that it's like a 4-generation family affair over in Copenhagen. It's a fairly big deal. But the second generation, who's now dead, he wrote a book right before he passed, where he talked about one of the evolutions that he saw in people throughout the years that he'd been doing this is people carrying this intense tension in their lower bellies.
Wow.
He calls it the exam belly. Like you're studying for an exam and you're anxious and you're scared, and so you kind of tense up in the lower belly. And he sees people more and more live with that constant tension down there, and it causes digestive issues. It causes reproductive issues because it blocks your blood flow to your reproductive organs and all of this. And so like fear, yes, 100%, but it can really be like in our bodies and in our system in a way that we're just not recognizing.
Yeah, it does make me think about the different parts of the body and how we hold stress is so underknown or underexposed to people in general. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, what does this neck pain mean? Oh, what does this lower back pain? And I'm sure you studied all that when you were doing yoga. You could really feel your body in a different way.
Yeah, more so from the body SDS, because that's what they work on.
Oh, really?
Exactly. Yeah. And it's like, like control issues, which is like calves and bladder. And so like you have all these different things that are in different parts of your body, and it's all connected. But is that
a yoga thing, or is that something else?
No, it was literally like the founder of it was a guy who made furniture, and then he recognized that his genius was that he could heal people with his hands. He could just help them with their pain and their issues. And then his son, the guy I was just talking about, who wrote a book just before he passed away, he was like 4 or 5 years old. He was watching his dad do this, and then treating his dad, and then he like did his whole life. He worked with top athletes in Tour de France, and also worked with doctors and trying to document some of these things. And then his son is my friend now, and mentor and business partner as well. We actually have a couple of businesses together. But he then also, from he was a little kid, studied it, became a karate champion also. So he's like also an athlete, and then he made an education out of it and has trained over 700 people. Wow. So it's a wild, and then he has 6 kids, 5 of whom are also working in that business now.
Oh my God!
Yeah, it's really a family affair. But yeah, it's like that's one of the things that I'm super passionate about and super fascinated about, like bringing that awareness of how humans actually work and how the human body and mind, like body mind is one thing, right? They're not separate, and how that whole like human existence, whatever it is, like it's not even like we're not isolated either, right? Like is that like we're just this lump of meat inside a bag of skin? Like no, we're not. Like we're an integral part of everything, of all of life, and we don't think of ourselves that way, and we don't think of like we don't have no idea how to operate this being that we are.
That we're connected to the earth, to the trees, to the stars. Like there's parts of us in all of that. Mm-hmm. And we just don't take that grand approach. And I think if you have that macro approach, you then think of like doing the right thing a little bit differently. You think of like saying hello to somebody is almost like saying hello to yourself. Mm-hmm. And I think it's just, it's definitely a narrative that I wish was more ingrained in all of our heads. And that's why I do the podcast. That's why because I try to make that a reality for people by speaking about it and by living it.
That's it. I mean, for me, at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is connection.
Mm.
Starting with a connection with ourselves and then connecting with other people. I feel like, especially in business, so many people get confused.
Mm. Maybe the podcast title should be Connected Conversations then.
Yeah. There you go, man. Danny, such a joy. I'm super glad that that I ran into you at the event in New York a few months ago, or whenever it was. Such a joy to get to know you here. Really, really appreciate you, man. You're doing God's work. You're bringing love and connection and curiosity into the world, which is, something that's extremely valuable.
I appreciate that tremendously. And it was a pleasure to learn more about your story today and learn more about you and the different evolutions of Calvin.
Yeah. Thanks, man. My pleasure. And the evolutions of Danny. Yeah. I'm going to really enjoy just watching you for the next long time. You're going to go ahead and do amazing things. I am absolutely convinced. And, come by when you're in New York. We'd love to see you.
Yes, sir. Hell yeah.
Again.
I'm honored. You're thinking of me in that way. And I'm really grateful to spend some time here today with you and connect with you, like 30 or 40% there.
Yes. As much as we can with this piece of technology, right?
Yeah, pretty good. Pretty good, all things considered.
It is pretty darn good, yeah. Yeah, next level, next we're going to do VR podcast interviews. And then
can't wait.
And then in person, yeah.
VR podcasts are coming soon.
Yeah, have you tried it? Have you played around with it?
Not yet, but I'm very curious too, and I strongly believe that's the future of this is so. If we can imagine a better experience, we could imagine so much. Like we could imagine us in a stadium, we could imagine us in a boat, we could imagine us on a plane, and now imagine if that was actually a reality and it could actually feel like that to both of us and also people watching. Oh my God, I'm so excited, Calvin. I can't tell you. Like it just fills me with so much joy to know that like I'll hopefully, God willing, be podcasting 10 years from now or 20 or 30 and that will be a reality.
Yeah. Are there VR podcasts out there? I haven't looked. I haven't seen any.
My buddy Sean Whiting, he is launching one of the first ones. I think it's Whiting. Maybe it's Whiting. Whiting. He talked to me about like how he's launching. He's big into Rec Room and the Oculus, and I haven't played around with any of it, but he's thinking about launching a VR podcast, and I am so excited to see how it goes for him and just in general because it's coming.
I have a spare Oculus you can have if you stop by, and you can. If you don't have your own.
I don't have my own.
Yeah,
cool.
I bought one to check it out, and then someone sent me one as a gift. So I literally have one in the closet. This is unopened, so it's yours.
Oh, thank you. I'll take it.
Yeah, man, do it. My pleasure.
I appreciate the generosity.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. All right, man. So good to see you. Let's talk again soon.
Yes, sir. Great to see you as well. Be well.
All right. And the following thing, people know where to find you, Twitter, all the things?
Twitter, hey, Danny Miranda, podcast. Just search the podcast app for the Danny Miranda podcast. And hopefully you'll find an episode you like there. The range is wide.
Yeah. I was just listening to the pop one this morning. It was pretty dope. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. It was a great episode. I really enjoyed it. Cool,
man. All right. Very cool. We'll link you up as well. So
sweet.
All right. Thank you, Danny. Have a phenomenal. My talk right
need
now.
Some caffeine. We need some caffeine for this man.
I know, right? Get this man some coffee. All right. Have a phenomenal day. Enjoy Austin. Safe journey home.
Yes, sir.
Right.
Appreciate it. Bye, Calvin. Peace.
All right.